Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to unpack one of the absolute most astonishing natural disasters in American history. We're going to dive deep into the terrifying, immense forces that are literally hiding right beneath our familiar landscapes, proving that, at the end of the day, nature possesses a power way, way beyond anything humanity can control.
Okay, so let's jump right into this mind-bending mystery. It starts with a completely impossible anomaly on one of the largest rivers in North America. Look, we all know how rivers work, right? Gravity pulls the water continuously downstream. It's just a basic law of nature. Yet history tells us that for a brief, terrifying window of time, the mighty Mississippi defied this fundamental rule. So how on earth does a massive body of water just reverse its direction?
Well, to understand how, we have to go back in time. I want you to imagine waking up on the cold winter morning of December 16, 1811. You're living in a frontier settlement along the river, and suddenly the crisp morning air is just shattered by a terrifying roar. It's completely unlike anything you've ever heard before. At first, a lot of people waking up to this deafening sound thought it was just a violently loud clap of thunder. Others, literally lying in their beds, genuinely mistook the booming noise for an approaching, invading army. But the reality? The reality was something entirely different and, honestly, much more dangerous.
Section 1. An impossible winter morning. Let's see exactly how this morning of terror unfolded.
Within seconds of that initial roar, the frontier was thrust into absolute chaos. The ground beneath their feet didn't just tremble, it shook violently. The structures they called home simply couldn't withstand the force, with houses collapsing instantly all around them. If you looked outside, you would have seen massive, ancient trees snapping entirely in half as if they were just tiny twigs. And perhaps most horrifying of all, enormous cracks actually began to split open the earth right before their very eyes.
And at the absolute climax of that morning's impossible events, frightened witnesses out on the water watched in pure, unadulterated disbelief. Enormous waves actually began to race upstream. Boats that were just navigating the current were suddenly and violently thrown entirely off course. The mighty Mississippi River, defying all logic and reason, actually appeared to flow backward.
Section 2. The Deep Continental Force. We need to figure out exactly what caused this impossible event right in the middle of the continent.
Modern scientists have studied the geological records, and they estimate the culprit was a series of colossal earthquakes centered near the small town of New Madrid, which is in present-day southeastern Missouri. We're talking about staggering estimated magnitudes hitting between 7.0 and 8.0 on the scale. Make no mistake, these were among the absolute most powerful earthquakes ever recorded in all of North American history.
Now, there is a really fascinating contrast here. When we think of earthquakes today, we almost always think of the West Coast, right? But unlike coastal tremors, these New Madrid quakes struck deep within the North American continent. And that matters because the geological makeup of the continent's interior is older, colder, and a lot denser. This unique, deep continental structure allows seismic energy to travel hundreds of miles virtually unimpeded. It's kind of like a stone being dropped into a completely still pond, with those ripples just traveling outward forever.
To truly grasp the terrifying scale of that unimpeded energy, just consider this for a second. The shaking was so incredibly widespread, it was felt all the way from Canada down to the Gulf of Mexico, and from the Appalachian Mountains all the way across to the Great Plains. The energy traveling through the Earth's crust was so immensely strong that church bells rang entirely by themselves in cities hundreds of miles away from the epicenter. I mean, even sturdy brick chimneys collapsed in places completely removed from the actual fault line.
And the craziest part? This wasn't just a single morning of chaos. It was a prolonged nightmare. Over several months, the region was rocked by at least 3 major catastrophic quakes. You had the first massive strike in December of 1811, a second major hit in January of 1812, and then a third incredibly powerful earthquake rocking the region in February of 1812.
Section 3. Reshaping the landscape. Let's look at how these immense forces completely transformed the geography of the central United States almost overnight. The landscape was permanently scarred by this sheer power. I mean, the ground violently sank, literally swallowing entire forest whole into the earth. Simultaneously, other vast areas of land were suddenly lifted several feet into the air. The shifting crust caused massive fissures to open up across the land, some stretching for miles. And out on the waterways, the shifting earth dramatically altered navigation routes, instantly creating brand new waterfalls and rapids where absolutely none had existed the day before.
You are definitely going to want to remember this fascinating term, sand blows.
As those massive fissures opened up for miles across the land, the intense pressure from beneath the earth squeezed trapped groundwater straight to the surface. This resulted in literal geysers of water, sand, and mud bursting violently from the newly opened earth. It was a chaotic, muddy eruption all across the frontier landscape.
And this sequence right here finally solves our impossible river mystery. Step 1. The immense seismic force caused a sudden uplift of the riverbed, coupled with massive landslides along the banks. Step 2. All of that displaced earth and uplifted rock temporarily blocked parts of the Mississippi River. Step 3. That sudden, massive damming effect created enormous waves that forcefully pushed the water upstream. So while the reversal only lasted a short time, this sudden, violent mechanical blockage gave the astonishing impression of a completely reversed flow.
The earthquakes also left behind beautiful but lasting monuments to their destructive power. One of the most remarkable changes occurred in present-day Tennessee. The land there suddenly sank and rapidly filled with water, forming Reelfoot Lake. It's a stunning body of water that still exists today, acting as this permanent, lasting reminder of this incredible disaster.
Section 4. Spiritual Signs and Apocalyptic Fears. Let's talk about how the people living in this sparsely populated frontier tried to make sense of this chaos.
This event had a massive psychological and cultural impact. For the Native American tribes living in the region, whose villages were tragically destroyed by the tremors, these earthquakes were interpreted as powerful spiritual signs from the earth. By contrast, a lot of the frontier settlers, who were watching the ground split and rivers literally run backward, genuinely believed they were witnessing the apocalyptic end of the world.
Just imagine the mental toll this must have taken. Even experienced explorers and traders who had traveled the Mississippi for years struggled to understand what they were seeing, because the landscape they knew so intimately was transformed almost overnight. Families were forced to live in a state of constant dread. Those repeated shocks continued for months, keeping everyone in fear as the earth just simply refused to remain still.
Section 5. The Modern Threat. Let's bring this narrative into the present day and understand why this 1811 explainer matters so much to all of us right now.
The contrast here is incredibly stark. Back in 1811, the death toll remained miraculously low, but that was strictly because the region was so sparsely populated at the time. If an event of this exact same magnitude struck that exact same geographic region today, experts estimate the modern impact would be absolutely devastating. We are talking about millions of people affected across several different states.
It would mean catastrophic damage to our modern way of life. That deep continental energy that once rang church bells hundreds of miles away would instantly cripple cities. It would destroy our intricate network of highways and bridges, sever the underground pipelines that deliver our energy and water, and completely cripple critical infrastructure across multiple states in the American heartland.
And this is absolutely not just a historical curiosity. More than 2 centuries have passed, yet the new Madrid fault system remains active